Representatives Cindy Abrams and Kevin Miller. Welcome to Message from the House.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
I am excited to dive into this. Candidly, I don't know a ton about this sector, and I know you guys are our law enforcement experts with robust backgrounds of your own. I do want to mention we're here to talk about House Bill 131, but I also want to hear a little bit about your backgrounds as well.
Sure. I served with the Cincinnati Police Department. I moved to Cincinnati, I can't believe I'm saying this, almost 30 years ago. I was a young woman, 22 years old, and I served on patrol, mostly. A little bit of time in undercover work, vice, so your undercover drugs and prostitution.
Wow. Was that always something that you knew that you were called to do?
No, you're never ready for that.
Yeah.
Until they say, hey, clearly I was young.
Right.
Young enough for a lot of different missions that we had. So, yeah.
But even just being in, the line of being a policewoman, was that something that you had made your mind up about or something?
Initially, when I graduated from IU, Indiana University, I graduated in May of 96, and I wanted to work for the FBI. And they were hiring, believe it or not, accountants, which I am not one, as you all know. I like to look at the numbers. I'm not doing any math myself, so there's that. So I was at the jobs fair, and Cincinnati Police was there along with the State Patrol. They were there, Indiana State Patrol, because, of course, I was originally born a Hoosier. And so applied for Cincinnati and multiple others, and Cincinnati called first. So
That's
here
incredible.
I am.
That doesn't seem like a profession that you would go to a job fair for and pick the most dangerous.
Well, look, I mean, we're made a little differently.
Yeah.
So the whole danger thing, you really don't think about, quite frankly. You rely on your training, and your training kicks in, and that's just that. You don't think about the danger until you're driving home.
Yeah.
So
an after effect. Interesting.
Correct.
And then Representative Miller, how about you?
Yeah, so mine's pretty similar. However, I had an interest in law enforcement, but ironically enough, it was not with the Ohio State Highway Patrol. I was a big sportsman growing up, and I actually wanted to work for ODNR. So I wanted to be a game warden. My undergrad degree, I started in wildlife management and then ended up with a degree in environmental education, communication, and interpretation. That's a mouthful, but the reason I switched was so that I could go to the Ranger Academy up at Cuyahoga Community College, where I got my OPATA certification and my National Park Service certification. But when I finished that, I did some looking into the ODNR as far as hiring, and I was told, we're not hiring right now. Well, unfortunately, I evidently got some bad information, because when I applied to the Highway Patrol and showed up at the academy, I saw about 3 of my classmates that were there, and they were wearing patches that said Ohio Division of Wildlife.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got some bad intel.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it all worked out very well. I had a career with the Ohio State Highway Patrol before my appointment, and over 22 years. So, very blessed.
Which areas did you serve or patrol or work in?
Sure. So I was pretty fortunate. I was able to get back home.
Nice.
So I was assigned to the Toledo Post right out of the academy, and then spent 5.5 years there before I was planning on moving to Columbus. For my wife was finishing medical school, and the opportunities were a little bit better down here. So we were going to move. I was going to transfer, and I happened to get the offer to be promoted. So the patrol ended up paying for my move. So that was a great thing.
Oh, yeah, that's wonderful.
So, yeah.
And, to put things into perspective for folks, are, the guards that we see at the State House, you will both have to forgive me. I have very limited knowledge on this topic. So are the folks we see at the State House protecting us every day? Are they State Highway Patrol?
Sure, they are at the State House. However, there's troopers and police officers.
Okay.
So 2 different classifications. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you both. I do have to ask, too, because I'm thinking of my own, parents. How do they feel about this?
Well, so mine, at the moment when it was going on, when I came home, from the job fair, and I'm like, I'm going to, apply for these departments. And, my parents were both very supportive. They never said at the moment, like, no way, we're totally terrified of that. But truthfully, when I moved, they moved me down here to Cincinnati, or down there, I guess, to Cincinnati. And luckily, for them, there was no social media back in 1996. So all the things we went through, like the 2001 riots, like they didn't know about it until it hit national news, which
Oh,
it
wow.
did. But again, I didn't really tell them about my daily experiences, but I did call them on the way home from work quite a bit to thank them for being so strict and for disciplining me and for loving me because I saw the other side of that, sadly,
Yeah.
that exists every single day. And I think that Kevin and I bring such a different perspective to the house because of our experiences with law enforcement, the things we've seen, quite frankly, we can never unsee. So when we have a strong opinion about something, it's because of something we've actually seen and had to process through.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that gives us a different perspective also is what was a crisis for us in our law enforcement careers. I mean, that's a real crisis when you
Mhm.
have to knock on somebody's door at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell them their child is never coming home. That's a crisis. A lot of the things we do here are extremely important. But some of our colleagues may get into crisis mode. But I think for us, we have a different perspective. But your question was about parents. So my parents were always real supportive. I think what hit home for them that was probably difficult was when I had just exited my cruiser and walked up to issue a citation to a truck driver. In seconds later, my cruiser was absolutely totaled. I think that's probably where they understood the gravity of the situation of what I did day in and day out. But always real supportive. They knew I loved the work, very supportive, but that was difficult, I think, for them.
Yeah.
And to go back to the crisis, people think we're in crisis around here, and we kind of joke that when we panic, then everybody else needs to be in complete tailspin because like when that happens, we actually are in crisis. But on a serious note, same thing. Less than a year into my career with the police department, we had a line of duty death. We had two officers, Pope and Jeter, killed in the line of duty, and that really put things in perspective for me. You know, you're standing there at the funeral, you're looking at the officer in the casket wearing the same uniform as you. And one of my classmates, again, Kevin Cran, was killed in the line of duty. My dear friend Katie Conway survived, thank God. But again, so much trauma and crisis of one of your own, let alone every other officer that loses their life in this state. We feel it. And I can speak for Kevin, we feel it today when we lose, like we've had four officers, two shot and killed in the state in the last couple of weeks, and then two are in, I believe, still critical condition.
In
And we feel
Columbus.
that. We feel that still today.
And yeah, you're right. It has been a very dark, month with just the tragedies that we have seen. And to segue into, House Bill 131, the ticket quota bill, and reading through it, I learned some interesting things, and I can't wait to ask you guys, your input on it. I will start by just having you, Rhett Miller, explain what the bill works to do.
Sure, it's actually a pretty simple bill. It just prohibits the use of ticket quotas. I've always said all along, people need to understand that our men and women in law enforcement are there to protect and serve. They are not there to be revenue generators. And unfortunately, in some communities around the state, that's what they're being used at. And I think the bigger issue is the public perception issue. When folks are doing things like that and agencies are operating like that, you lose that faith that they have in the law enforcement community. And, as I've said before, when someone receives a citation, we'll just go with the thing I'm used to, a speeding citation, right? They need to know that that citation was issued to them to change their behavior. Not because I needed to, make my quota by the end of the shift or the week or the month or whatever. They need to know that I'm truly there for their safety. And look, at the end of the day, when folks see someone stopped on the side of the road, they don't know whether they were issued a citation or a warning anyway. So it's really about changing the behavior and, raising money, trying to have them be a cash cow for the local coffers. That's not what it's all about. And, huge bipartisan support, as you saw, passed unanimously on the floor. So,
Yeah. Well, Rep. Abrams, when you first heard about this bill, what were your thoughts?
Well, it's funny. I said to Rep. Miller, are there departments still using quotas? Because,
Yeah.
like, I don't mean to be offensive, but, like, we haven't used those. But at least they never told us you're going to go out and get this many, whatever. But, when you literally start the cruiser and put it in park or put it in drive, you are going to see someone violating the traffic laws because nobody can drive perfectly, number one, and everybody's trying to get somewhere, whether it's too fast or they blow through a red light or whatever it is. And you're right, when we stop you, we don't just want to be a ticket writing machine. We want you to change your behavior. So for me, if I stopped you and you were respectful, you stopped the car, you turned your music down, you rolled the windows down, you had your driver's license, your proof of insurance, guess what? 9 times out of 10, you got a warning because, I mean, all of those factors. But if you didn't turn the music down, you didn't roll the window down, you didn't, again, all these things, attitude starts like, well, then you're met with the same attitude.
That's a very good message for folks, by the way. And then I want to ask, what was the general feeling from law enforcement officers to these ticket quotas? Was it, did some understand why they were necessary? Was it widely criticized by the folks giving them?
Sure. I think a couple different points here. The rank and file officers certainly feel like, that shouldn't be acceptable, right? They should be, stopping folks, issuing citations when they need to. But I think that, there was some hesitancy by, some leadership because they're pushed in certain areas for numbers or things of that nature. So, you kind of saw both types of folks on both sides of the issue. I do think it's important to note that at the end of the day, the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police came out and supported the legislation. So I think that speaks volumes. We did some things initially to help get them to a point where they were comfortable with the legislation. There's a couple components of the bill that says, hey, you can still hold your officers accountable. You can look at the work of what's being done on a shift and compare officers as to what they're doing, or you get someone that says simply, I'm not going to write any tickets. Well, there's pieces in the bill that allows you to address that. Essentially, that's refusing to do your job, and that's not acceptable.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for clarifying that.
And again, you cannot go out and drive. I mean, I challenge you today when you drive home, look around. I mean, someone is weaving in the lane, someone is holding their phone,
I know.
looking at it or watching a Netflix movie or whatever they're doing behind the wheel. And so you have to, by nature of just being out there and proactively patrolling, you're going to see violations.
I'm going to think about it.
Take
I
a
hope
look.
that I forget. This is the same thing of, when you are a newscaster, it's hard to watch the news, because you just notice the different things. I can only imagine as a, former law enforcement
The
officer.
whole way here,
Yeah.
an hour and 50 minutes. It's like, what are these people doing?
I can't imagine. And then Rev. Abrams, I'll ask, what were you hearing from your community of colleagues and former law enforcement officers about the bill?
Yeah, I think the committee as a whole, obviously, everyone was happy with it. It came out almost unanimous, and people were ready to pass it. It made sense. It's common sense. And my local law enforcement, they're out there to protect people. They're out there to proactively, patrol and whatnot. They're not just out there to write tickets, which, they're not thinking like this ticket is going to give X amount of dollars to my local jurisdiction. That's not what we're here for. We're here to keep people safe. And again, the whole discretion when you pull somebody over, you don't realize how big that is. It really is.
And I personally didn't think that there was a such thing as ticket quotas.
I hear you.
So just to chime in a little bit, so obviously the Highway Patrol has a certain reputation for maybe writing a few citations.
I just thought those were rumors, man. I didn't actually think they were real. So when I heard about this bill, I was like, what the heck?
But ironically enough, as I say that, it is prohibited in the union contract for our state troopers. So ticket quotas were already, I don't know if illegal is the right word, but prohibited for our state troopers. And that was one of the things that I've continued to maintain throughout this legislation is that if the Ohio State Highway Patrol, which is arguably the most proactive because they don't respond to many calls, right? They go out and enforce traffic laws, investigate traffic crashes. If they can operate without a quota system, I would certainly think that other agencies can. So.
Yeah. Clearly, I don't speed because I've never had to question if the validity of my ticket was because
I
of
love
my
that so much. The law
I think I
abider.
got one a sophomore year of college, and I cried the rest of the way
Oh, see,
home.
but
So
it changed
scared.
your behavior.
It
This is
did.
my whole point. Right.
It did.
There it is.
It was my fight. I think I was 15 over. I thought it was 75 still,
Oh,
and it was 60.
15 will do it
Yeah.
every time.
Oh, for
Right, Kevin?
sure. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Keep it under
I
nine,
understood,
under
right?
nine.
I will never forget it. It definitely changed the behavior. So I also want to talk about this part involving the Attorney General's office. Can you explain that piece of where they kind of come into play with this?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So if there's an alleged violation, an anti-quota law violation could be filed by anybody, including a police officer who's being told by a supervisor, police chief, that they have to write X amount of tickets. There's a form that they'll be able to access from the AG. They can put their name on it, or they can remain anonymous. They'll report the facts of the circumstances, that they're alleging. At that point, the AG's team will investigate, and then if it's found that there is a violation, there'll be a cease and desist order.
To the agency.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And I also just want to open the floor to any other pieces of legislation that you both are working on. We can talk about anything. It doesn't have to just even be in a law. Anything that you all are working on right now.
Well, I think a lot of the bills that we're both working on have to do with public safety. Quite frankly, I would say 99% of the bills that I've introduced and that have gotten up to the governor, they're all public safety. So my most important ones, I think, of course, we talked about distracted driving. We're changing behavior behind the wheel. We have less death, which is very exciting. I mean, I think the first year was almost 20% less fatal traffic accidents. And to Kevin's point, to make that death notification is so hard. And especially when they ask you, did they have their seatbelt on? Could this be prevented? And it's heartbreaking when you say, yeah, they could have prevented this death if they were wearing their seatbelt. So again, distracted driving was huge. Peer support teams, peer support for first responders, where they can have some training and go ahead and create their own peer support teams. Again, we're saving lives. We don't know how many, but we know that unfortunately we have a high level of suicide and divorce and all kinds of different things that happen because of the stress of the job. And then this GA having sponsor testimony, again, year 5 on my pension bill. And I think this is going to be the year. I'm feeling very, very good about this.
Now, similar to Rep. Abrams, most all my legislation is in the wheelhouse of public safety, right? Law and order, kind of, that's what, we've done. That's what I did for over 22 years with the patrol. You ask about impactful legislation that I'd like to see across the finish line would be our thin blue line bill. So essentially what that bill does is it protects the flying of the thin blue line flag. And what I tell folks is, the American flag is protected, the Ohio flag is protected, POW flag is protected, and all the military flags are protected. The thin blue line flag, it just represents the folks that are serving in our communities each and every day. So just like the military folks serve often away overseas, these are the folks that are in our communities each and every day, protecting us. And I just believe that it's not right that a homeowners association or a condo association can tell our folks that no, you can't fly that. That's a political statement. It couldn't be further from the truth.
I didn't even realize that.
Oh, last GA, so the floor debate was going on. I had no intention of saying anything. And this one sat 2 seats away from me. And I was so fired up when the debate turned political. I'm like, oh my gosh, let me give you the history of this flag. And so that was it. And I didn't have any prepared remarks, but boy, oh boy, I had to speak my mind because people got so far from the truth of what the flag means. So.
Yeah, that's so difficult. I didn't know that I didn't know that they were even banning.
Yeah, so
about that.
Ironically enough, I guess I can give you a little bit more. It actually comes out of my district. So there was the father of a chief of police in Kirkersville Chief Eric DeSera, who the name is, or who the bill is named after, lost his life in a fatal shooting in Kirkersville. His dad was given that flag to fly at his funeral. He flew it for 4 years until someone in the association, the homeowners associations, complained about the flag, and he had to take it down. So just heartbroken. I think this is the third GA I've carried this bill, trying to get it across the finish line. So we're going to continue to keep working, and I'm not going to stop till we get this across the finish line.
Yeah, and I'm sure, those individuals that inspire these bills and tragedy, obviously, but it will in turn help others. And I don't know if you both are familiar with the 10 TV news anchor whose daughter passed away from distracted driving, Dom Taberry. Yeah.
He's great. He gave great proponent testimony on distracted driving.
Oh, did he?
He did.
Yeah, it's
Powerful.
I've actually, when I was the post commander at the Granville Post, did presentations with him.
Oh, great.
In the schools. So, yeah.
Yeah, I
I've done
do.
this with him for Maria's message.
Yeah, I do believe he started going to the high schools in Central Ohio after I had graduated from the system in Hilliard. But yeah, it's just, that's always, what my mind goes to. It's the people that I think we all resonate with most of. This is why we're doing what we're doing. So
one more thing that I haven't introduced yet, but I'm certainly working on. We are going to take a serious look at when you're convicted of aggravated murder of a first responder, not just a police officer right now in current law. We just talk about police officers, but we are actually going to expand it. My plan is anyone that wears the uniform, whether it's police, fire, EMS, or military, if you intentionally kill them and you're charged and convicted with aggravated murder, you're not coming out of prison or you're getting the death penalty. Those are the choices.
yeah, I mean, sounds self-explanatory to me, but I'm just a person. I know that there's so
counts.
many
Yeah.
complications, right, with, how these bills move forward, but I know your constituents and the folks of Ohio really appreciate your work. And thank you both for joining me. We're already at 30 minutes, which is crazy. I could ask 100 more questions about you both. but-
Part 2.
Yeah, part 2. We love a part 2.
Thanks for having us.
Quickly, I will just go through our social media. You can follow us on the Ohio House GOP Caucus on Facebook, Ohio House_GOP on Instagram, and OHR GOP Caucus on Twitter. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Representatives Cindy Abrams and Kevin Miller, thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you.